Good afternoon. My name is Mathieu Dupont de Linchin. I'm an architect from France, and I teach Blender for I think more than 10 years now. I teach it in a School of Architecture of Grenoble and in the University of Lyon. And I founded a Fab Lab and Makerspace in this Fab Lab in my small village. So I'm in 3D printing too. But today I will talk mainly about architecture. And I wrote a book about Blender for architecture in French. So if you want to start to speak French, I think it's a good opportunity. So I use Blender a lot as an architect, even if it's not, often it's not the standard user case for architects. But today I will show you some of my works. So I will start with a standard case, a small house, and how I use it, and how an average architect that didn't spend years in Blender could use it. And then I will show some more complex cases that are, I think, more interesting. And one case that is a building that just finished a few months ago. An example of use of Blender for archaeological reconstruction. And if I have time, some experimentation around 3D printing. So for the daily use of the architect, so I'm working alone. I'm not in a big agency, so I do small projects, small buildings, so mainly houses for people. So generally, most of the work for those type of projects are made in architectural software that are generally proprietary software, like ArchiCAD, Revit, Allplan, and this type of things. But I always manage to put a little bit of Blender in it. So this project I will show you, it was a small house, not that small, but a wooden frame house with ecological material. So it's wood for the structure and what cellulose? Cellulose. I forgot cellulose. What? You understand it? For the insulation. So I was in charge of the design of the house, but I didn't I didn't make the site supervision. So it was in a village, in something like a suburb with small houses everywhere. So the first step where I use Blender is for the mass sketches. So the terrain was not very big. So to check with the client where we can put the house, the project was, they wanted the house, which is 2-story building, a small atelier, a small workshop, and a place to park the car, which is the gray part at the front. And they were very, the laws didn't allow them to build everywhere on the terrain. So I had to check with them which one of the solution they can use. And this can be done very easily in Blender because you can move the things very fast. It's almost real time, and even if you, with Cycle, you can study the solar projection, the shadows, in real time with them. There is an add-on which is called the Sun Position add-on that is very effective for that. But I think it's not working anymore in the 2.79. I don't know why. So sometimes I switch back to the older versions. So I can use it and show them, okay, at this time of the day, the shadows will be here. The shadows of the neighbor will be on your courtyard and things like that. So most of the architects I know, they prefer to use things like SketchUp to do this type of things. But I find Blender more effective and fast to use, so I prefer to use Blender. Then in the second part, I switched to, at this time I was using ArchiCAD, which is an architectural software that doesn't run on Linux, unfortunately. So you use it to draw the plans, to check the quantities, have the quantity of floor, of roofing, of everything, and make quotations, I think we call it like that, things that you cannot do in Blender. And then I switch back in Blender for the renderings. Generally from Archicad, I use a 3ds export format because this is the one that works the best. None is perfect between 3ds, OBJ, Collada. None of them is perfect. The advantage with the 3ds export is that it keeps the UV mapping that is done by the architectural software. So you import it in Blender, and you don't have to UV map your things. So all the names are completely messy. There is one material per object. So you have 54 walls, and each of them has a new material, which is called wall 001, wall 002. So there is small work to do, but it's easy to do in Blender. You select everything, Control L, link material, so that you have only one left. So it's not that big work to do, but there are a few things that will prevent an architect that doesn't know Blender to switch easily to this type of things, because if you show him, okay, you just have to do Control L, and you just have to change that, and change that, and change that, it seems small amount of work for us that are used to Blender, but for somebody that doesn't use it every day, it may discourage him. So at this time of the project, I don't want, I will show you, so I can use renderings for two things. One is for the permit, the building permit, because you need a view of the project to view how it is integrated in the surroundings and things like that. And I use it to discuss options for materials with the clients. So here, this was the original project, but the city council refused the black tiles because in France, they copy-paste the laws for architectural things from one village to the other one, and everywhere it's written red tiles, everywhere. And so the church that is just aside has black tiles, but church is a church. So they refused it. So I had to discuss with the clients to see what option we keep if we fight with the city council or if they accept the red tile. But at this time, I wrote it. Realism is not an option because you are doing just a project. And if you are using cycles to have the most realistic rendering, then the client will come back to you 6 months later to tell you, okay, it was supposed to be like that, and this is what I got. And so it's for that it's a choice to make unrealistic projects. The aim of the rendering is to make the client understand how the house will be. But you must always keep distance, put distance between the project and the reality, so that they will not assume that it is supposed to be exactly like that. It's for that the trees are very ugly. That I use a lot freestyle to add lines, so that the people they see that they know it's a drawing, it's not a picture. So if we have time at the end, I will show you okay, I can just show you the file. It's not very complicated. It's supposed to be here. And not to forget that I am paid to design the house, not to make beautiful images. So the price I'm paid to design the first sketch of the houses is not the price a designer would be paid to make a beautiful image. So my work is not to make perfect images. And most of the time, my clients are not in the graphic design world, so they don't care very much. They find this very nice, even if I'm not very proud of the trees and things like that. Okay, it's not my best image, but the clients, they're okay with this. So this is the import almost directly from Archicad. And maybe if I open the outliner, you will see the messy names and things like that. So these are the names of my objects. So it's very easy to to move around. So if you don't have to go back and front from the architectural software to Blender and then go back and then go back, it's very okay because you know what you design in the architectural software, and once you are done in this one, you export to Blender, and then you don't move things anymore. Because if you start to make the two ways exchanges, it will not work and you will lose a lot of things. But then you just have, as I told you, the UV mapping is perfectly, not perfectly, but no, it's not this one, sorry. If I enter edit mode, okay, you see the UV mapping is done in a very strange way. Okay, everything is splattered, but if it's for a texture of wood like this one, it will make the trick because you don't care if the things are very well aligned where they are. So as I use very much repetitive tileable textures, this type of UV mapping is more than enough. And then at the end, the clients got their houses. It's not finished yet. For once, they were happy with their project. It's not always the case. So now we'll talk about another project that was much more interesting for me. It started as a teaching project. In fact, I was teaching in no Blender. I was teaching an architectural project in an engineering school from Saint-Etienne. And we made some projects. We showed it to the council of the city. And they said, oh, it's nice what you did. Maybe the next one you could work on a site. We have a project for some years later. So I made the students work on a project on this site. And 2 years later, the city council decided to build this project and to build it respectful to what the students did with me. So it's but it started as a student project and it finished as a build project. So I was very happy that we can go from the beginning to the end. It's in an arboretum, so I think this word exists in English. So it's a place where you have a lot of trees. It's on the small mountain at the top of the city of Rouen, close to where I live, and you have a very beautiful view. And but there is no, when you arrive there, you just park your car, and there are trees everywhere, and you don't know where to go. So the city council wanted a small building that catch the eyes, and when the people park their car, they know where to go because they see the building. It was supposed to be I didn't find the word in French is préau, and the translation in English is covered courtyard, like for children, you know, in schools. They call it halle, city, big things, but in fact it's quite small. It's an open structure. It's not closed. It was supposed to allow people coming to take a walk, to allow them to enjoy the panoramic view, sheltered from the wind and the rain. It's supposed to receive some exhibitions once in a while. And there are a lot of schools visiting the place to discover the trees. So it was made to be big enough to receive one complete class and have the space for the teacher to explain the things and things like that. There were some constraints. So in the arboretum, they have trees. So one of the constraints was to use the trees of the site. So it was very interesting for me because I'm in ecological buildings, and I think it's I will never make a more perfect project for that, because the wood was taken on the site and did only 15 kilometers by truck to go to the sawing, the guy that saw the wood, and then it came back to the site. So the wood made 30 kilometers only for this project. So I was very happy with that. But it was a constraint because they wanted to use local woods, so no laminated timbers. I don't know if you understand what it means. So we had to find, the trees are not very big, so we had to use small parts. We could not use a big big timbers and big things like that. And it was supposed to be a showroom for some wooden techniques, so they wanted that the people visiting the building can see, okay, this is how we build, how we can build today with wood, with local wood. And they wanted something quite contemporary, even if it doesn't mean anything. But okay, and even among them, they didn't know what to choose. Some of them wanted round timber to be like a forest. Some wanted incredible things, but the budget was not that big. It was 70,000 euros to build the complete things. But as it's open, there is no insulation, there is no electricity, no water. So it was enough, but there were no room for incredible extravaganza and things like that. So this is the site. In fact, we had a very small terrain. Around it was not the same proprietary, so we were to be on the small terrain, and there is a big slope, and you have to make the access for the people in wheelchair because it's compulsory in France. So it was quite difficult to place the building on the slope so that there is not too much slope for the wheelchairs. One of the interesting things is that, okay, as there are not so many architects here, I will pass this fast, but in France for public buildings, you choose the architect first, he makes the design, and then with this design you choose the companies that will build. And in some of the case, and in that case it was that, the companies are responsible for the structural calculation. And so it's the company that is supposed to calculate the size of the woods. But we had to cut the trees long before the time we can choose the companies, because the wood has to dry, and we didn't want to dry it in an oven because we would have lost completely the ecological aspect of the project. So I had to design the building. Even if I was not responsible of the calculation, I had to design it as close as possible to what it would be in reality. As all the carpentry work, wooden frame would be visible, I had to spend a lot of time on all the fixing and everything to be sure that okay, the more precise I am, the more chance there is that the carpenter will respect what I draw and that the project will be as I designed it. In the first house, for example, I don't care what is inside. All the carpentry, the wooden frame is inside the walls, so it's not important here. Everything is outside. So I needed a design tool that is fast, precise, effective during the sketching phase. And I wanted to have the liberty to play with the shapes while designing it. So I'll let you guess which one I choose. So this was the first sketch of the building. So you see it's very complicated. I think 90% is cubes. So it's the basic cube, and you just have to scale it. And I will show you the file. So this was the first design to show to what we call esquisse in French, so sketch in English. I think it's sketch. So it was to have this one is not the one. This one was what we finished with the students. With the students, we finished with a project like that, but the size of those woods would have needed to use laminated timber, so it was impossible to build it like that. But the general concept with the two-part roof was kept. And my first sketch was. Was it? Maybe in this one. This is not the sketch, so I will find it. Sorry. Okay. It should be this one. No. You should clean your files at the end of your project, because later it's too late. And after you don't remember what you did. So here, the only thing that was not designed in Blender is the terrain, because for this project I use Revit from a company. I won't say the name because last time Ton said the name of the company, he received a part of the roof on the head. So Revit is an architectural software which has a tool that is very efficient to design the terrain with the 2D plans from the you get with the altitude of every point. But except that, I designed everything in Blender very fast. So what I wanted is to have the ability to just rotate the parts the way I want, to check what inclination of the parts of the timbers I can use. Because as you have the slope here, I didn't want to have a pillar at this part to make the building more separated from the terrain. So I used this X shape so that this part, in fact, is supported by this pillar, and the X shape and the V shape here allows to have a very small portée in French, a very small distance here that allow us to use the local woods with small parts. But then I had to play with the angles, and it was quite easy in Blender. The only thing to take care of is to respect the local axis. So everything, I kept in mind that every cube, the length of the wood is the Z local axis, so that if I want to change the size of this part, I just select the point that is here, or the face here, and I do GZZ, and I can move the part. So if you just respect this small rule, you are sure to have everything aligned correctly. So it's quick and dirty. You see that here I didn't took time to adjust the size and everything, but it was the sketch phase, so you don't need to go very far in the designing process, because a lot of things can still change at this time of the project. So if you spend 2 hours designing all the small parts and the client say, okay, now finally I don't want this, you just lost 2 hours. So we'll see a lot of small things change. And I use a lot of snap, of course, and a lot of array. A lot. I think most of the project here is made of arrays. This is an array, this is an array, this is an array. This part is an array too, with a curve modifier. Curve is very, is very efficient. I should have not touched this. To build these things like that, with one curve you can rule everything. So you have one curve that is making the shape of the, how do you call that, barrière, balustrade? Railing. Okay, thank you. And with the same curve you can use it with a curve modifier to and an array for the vertical parts. You make an array fit on curve so that the several array parts fit on the curve, then curve modifier, and your array follows things. And then with the same curve, you just use the section of the wooden part and the metal part, and with one curve, you move the curve and everything moves. No, that's quite effective, except in the angles here. You cannot easily say, okay, I want one pillar in this angle. But at this stage of the project, it's no problem. Nobody told me, it's smoothing apart here. So the rendering is fast because You don't have time to lose again. And for that, I must say that cycles really changed my life, because you just I think in 2 minutes settings, you have a nice renderings. So in my startup file, I have one sun and one sky. That's all, and it's enough to have this type of renderings, and your client say, "Oh, it's beautiful," and he doesn't know that you didn't spend time at all with that. And if you have a graphic card, it's very fast. So for that, at this stage, you see the grass is very ugly. The clients, I don't need to put lines with freestyle, because they know that it's not the finished project, because everything is ugly around. So it allows to discuss the general shape to convince the client, and the quality of the render is not the point. The only thing is that I wanted them to see what part is wood, what part is concrete. So there is some concrete for the foundation, and that's all. And then we go to the detailed project. So what we call the avant-projet détaillé in French. So the detailed project that will allow you to have the construction permit, and that will be the base for the discussion with the companies that will build. So this is rendering with cycles again on a picture of the site, so that for the building permit, you are obliged to do that in France. And I added freestyle lines. I don't know if you see it. It's very tiny. So that again, we put some distance with the picture, so that people don't think it's a picture. We will see at the end if it was needed or not. And I lose some time here to have the shadow projected here. I think nobody noticed it, but it was more for me than for the client. So to make this precision modeling, so you see here that all the assembly is designed here with the cut at the right angles and things like that. So you have to use a lot of workarounds. So I will open the file. It's for that I say somebody that would just start Blender will not use Blender for that. But in Revit that I use for the plans, building things like that is very cumbersome. It's more precise, but you cannot change the angles, for example, of the shape. And here, for example, you can, but not easily. You have to rebuild everything. And here, for example, in this part, there is a law in France that say that if a part is under 2.20 m, you have to make a sign on the wall, on the floor, so that people won't bump their head. So here, with the first design, I had the inclinated part that was too low, so the people would have, it would have been needed to make a smaller step here, so that people will not bump their head. So what I had to change the angle here, so that if you look at the side here, when you stand at this point, here you are at 2.20 m. So from the sketch I made, I showed you before, I had to change everything. In the sketch, it was much lower. If I can go back to the sketch, the first one, it's this one, I think. Here is much lower, and in this part here, you can bump your head. So, as I'm used to Blender, and I even started to design this type of thing with no snap before the snap arrived in Blender, before these buttons arrived in Blender, with only Shift S, snap to cursor, Shift S, cursor to selection, selection to cursor during arrows. So I'm not very afraid of this type of things. The main thing is to always think about your axis. Remember what is the axis of the part. So if I use this very ugly thing that I never use, the small gizmo here, you can see. Okay, sorry. I will put it on the. So this can show you the axis of the object. So every of them has the z-axis in the correct direction. And once you have that, it's just a matter of using G, Z, Z, and you move along the axis. To make those cuts, in fact, I didn't do it. You see, if I zoom very close, it's not good work. I started doing it the first time. The easiest way I found, I tried with booleans to make booleans for everything, but it's too slow. And you lose too much time. And once you have 10 or 12 booleans, editing becomes just, okay, you click edit mode, and then you go, you drink your coffee, you come back. What works very well to have a cut that is aligned with the other parts is to use the knife tool, because the knife tool can be snapped to other vertices. So you put it in the front view. Sometimes you have to include to join some of the parts so that you can, if you use the cut tool, and then you snap from here to here, and then you have your cut that is perfectly aligned, but is not interactive. So if you change the angle, you have to cut again. It's not that difficult. You just, again, up, you select everything, G, Z, Z, up, you move, and you cut again. So, but it's for that. I won't say it's the perfect tool. I always say to my students, some people, they build a cathedral with matches. It doesn't mean that matches are the best tool to build cathedral. So I use Blender for this. It doesn't mean Blender is the best tool for that. For example, in free tools, one of the tools that could be more effective is FreeCAD. That is more parametric than Blender, but I don't know it so much as Blender. So I prefer to use Blender. But I don't advise to my students to make the projects this way, because it's a lot of time if you don't know Blender. If you know Blender, it's with the keyboard shortcut, it's so easy to do G, Z, Z, Shift K to cut, align, S, Z, 0. Because if you want to align just the very basic trick, if I want to make all of this perpendicular again, I just do S, Z, Z, 0. And then it's perpendicular again. And once you know those little tricks that are nothing very special, and you get used to it, you can really build very fast your things. So something that is missing but not for long is layout. Is a layer manager. Is not layout. Sorry. The layer manager. So for that, there is an add-on that I really, if you don't know it and you have complex projects, you have to use it, because in the layer manager, so it's not the correct file, because here my layers have no name. With the layer manager, I will try to find a new name. Okay, I think it's this one. No. Okay, this one. So during the old days, I always had a text editor in which I was typing the name of my layers, saying, okay, like that. You see, I don't know. Can you read the texts that are? Yeah. So I was writing layer 1 is the terrain, layer 2 is the foundation, and things like that. With this add-on, the layer manager, you can name all your layers, and you can do group of layers. So when you have, because 2 weeks after you have closed for the last time your project, you don't remember where is what. It's impossible. You only have those dots here, and so with this one, for example, I have this one means what I will need for the rendering, okay, and this one means everything of the building, and you don't have to activate it by hand. And then just the one trick I used for this project that I will show you is here I have a lot of objects that are linked duplicates, one from the other one. And when you use a wood texture, so to make it clear, more clear, what I will do is, okay, I will just show this one here. So let's assume you have a lot of duplicates. So it's linked duplicates of the same object here. And you have your floor that is made of a lot of piece of woods like that. If you use UV mapping on the standard material for this, then if there is one node in the wood, it will be repeated everywhere, and it's very ugly. So there is just one little trick that maybe probably some people will know. If I go in the material settings, okay. Where is my wood? Is that I use UV mapping, because with the UV mapping you can choose the orientation of your wood. But then what I do is that I just will move the texture, the UV mapping, depending of the random from object info node. The problem is that the vector, you cannot, you are obliged to separate x, y, z from the vector. But then with an add node, I checked just one is enough. If you just remove this one, it works. So for every object, even if they are linked duplicate, they have the same material. If you make linked duplicate 20 times, with this random here, you will add to the x value of the UV and to the y value of the UV a random offset, so that every object will have a different. So if I do a very fast rendering here, we can see that they are not, it's the same texture, it's the same material, and it's the same object, but with this very small trick. And I use this a lot because basically a wooden frame house is 100 times the same object. You have the pillar and you just make a copy of it. So just small trick. So this is the views of I did for the carpenter, to be sure he understands what I was wanting. And then from this, he made what we call execution plans, les plans d'exécution, that are more buildable than this one. And he is responsible if it falls down. He is the guy that will go to jail, no me. I will just have to pay a lot of money. So just this one is more, it's not so serious, but for some years now, still you can surf on the hype about virtual reality, and it's very useful to convince clients. So and basic virtual reality is very, very easy to do, thanks to the vrai guys. I don't know if you know this. In 5 minutes, you get your project in virtual. You download it on your phone, then you use cardboards or things like that, and you show this to the client, and the client say, "Wow!" So, but what I noticed is that the people, they are more impressed by your phone than on the way they move the head than by the project. They don't look at the project anymore, so you have to be careful with that. I made the test once the building was finished, the day of the inauguration of the building. I brought my phone on my class, and the people were trying it. So some people were not looking at the building anymore; they just wanted to test the thing, and it's very difficult to find. I don't know what setting to change, but with the narrow angle of the phones in the Googles, in the how do you call this? Cardboard. Thank you. It makes a strange offset of size. And you are in the building, you put it, you recognize it's the same building, but you don't feel it's the same size. And so it's not that easy yet. They are time after time making those devices larger, not on the phone, but the ones that you connect to your computer. So I think it will solve the problem. But today I find it a little bit dangerous in the project phase to show to a client, especially in an inside room, to show him on your phone the VR, because he will have a feeling of space that is different of what the project will be at the end. And it may make some mistakes. So the hype may not last long. So I think in 2 years' time, this one will not be enough to impress people. But for the moment, when you showed your project with something like that, it just make them say, oh, and they take you seriously. And so you can use this to convince the people, but remember that it can be dangerous. So this is the address of the I don't know where it is. It was open somewhere, or maybe I closed it. But you can download it on your phone or on your browser, and you can move in it. Or at the end, if you want, I have my plastic cardboard, and you can test it. It's funny. I just check the time. Okay. So the exchange with the other actors, I will go quite fast. And if some people have technical questions about this, I will talk with them later. So in this project, I made the things in the wrong way. So generally, you design the building in the architectural software, and then you export it in Blender to make the render. Here, I designed the building in Blender, but then I had to make the plans, printed plans with quotation. So I had to export from Blender to Revit. It works quite well once you have found the workaround, and you take care to put always your object with the origin at the correct place. And then you have, for the ones who knows Revit, you have to import it in a family so that you can make cuts. And it's quite okay. Well, the plans I made for the building permit, in fact, it's the Blender import from Blender to Revit. And I could use snapping to make all the quotations and things like that. So with building information modeling on the IFC, I don't know if some people know what it means, these type of things. So it's supposed to be the future and save everybody, and everybody will be happy in the building industry. It's far from perfect. So one of the main problems is that IFC is not parametric for the moment. So even, for example, you do in FreeCAD, you do a parametric building where you type, okay, length of the beam, and it changes. You export that with IFC to Revit, and you lose the parametric. You have the exact copy of your project, but it's not parametric anymore. The axes are well kept. Names are exported. So with Blender, I can show you this one, because I have it here. I think it's on this. Okay. This is the IFC import from the carpenter. So from my design, it changed the design to make it easier to build for him. And what is interesting is that in the object settings, here you find the IFC type. So this is a beam, the name, this is the ID from the IFC, and you have every object has a correct axes. So if I use this one, so you see that this beam has its axis this way, and this beam has its axis this way. So the import is quite usable, except that, of course, I designed everything with the z-axis in this lens, and when you import from IFC, the z-axis is perpendicular. So it disturbed me a lot after, but so there is a IFC importer, which is an add-on from Blender. It's made by IFC OpenShell, so you can, if you Google, if you search in another searching engine than Google, IFC Blender, you will find easily this importer, but there is no exporter for the moment. The only way to export from Blender to IFC with free softwares is to export it to FreeCAD, and FreeCAD has an EFC exporter that is working quite well, but it's not for the daily work. One of the problems compared to 3ds, OBJ, Collada, and things like that is that IFC doesn't contain any material information, material in the sense of Blender. So you have no UV. You have to UV map everything. So the next step was, and I will go faster, was to make a model of the building. In fact, I made the model after the building was built because I had no time before. But let's say I should have done it this way. So this was quite an easy part, funny part, and finally easier than what I thought. So there is an add-on for Blender which is called SVG exporter that is quite effective because the laser cutter, most of them, they use SVG or Illustrator type vector, not pixels. So you have to export all of your shapes into SVG to cut it. So in the Fab Lab, we have a laser saw, which is an open source, open hardware laser cutter, which uses SVG. So you have to export all of your parts into SVG. So the thing is that you have to convert all of the meshes into curves. In fact, it's quite easy. I'll just show you if you want. You select the face. Okay, but this is the carpenter work. I didn't want this, so but I will just. First thing is to remove all the triangles with Alt-G so that you have only square faces. You select the face you want. So this one. I will remove all the other ones. I missed it. Sorry. It's the problem with live. So that I have only this that remains. The problem is that the IFC exporter exported with the Z axis this way. So if you want a 2D curve, you will lose because the 2D curve has the Z-axis normal to the surface. So if you want a 2D curve so that you can after put some thickness with the extrude so that you can check that your model is correct. If it's not clear, I show you. So because once you have convert everything to SVG to curves, you have to check that your model is correct. Okay, no, it's not the I will show you later. So it could be easy to do a script. I had no time, but you rotate XX 90 degrees in edit mode, and then in object mode, you rotate axis minus 90 degrees. And then you have the Z-axis. Okay, it was the Y, but you understand the... So you have to do it with every part. So this is where scripting is very interesting because you can easily script this. I even almost managed to do it. And I am very, very bad at scripting. And then after 1 hour struggling, I just said, okay, do it by hand. And I finished it by hand. I was quite ashamed because I wanted to show you my first script that is working, but okay. But as most of the parts of the building are the same, in fact, you see all here, all the beams are the same. For the roof, it's the same. So it took me 45 minutes to convert everything to curves. And then you get a file that is like that. Where is it? This one. So where, in fact, I converted to curves all the parts. I modified them a little bit so that I can cut it in the laser cutter. But this is a curve. with an extrude value here of 2.5 millimeters because I was cutting it in a 5 millimeter plywood and extruded the two sides. It makes me mad that every time you have to to divide by 2 the value here, but that's it. And so I just had to convert everything into curve, check with this extrude that the building was okay. So I modified it a little bit because in the real building you don't have those small gaps because it's metal fixtures that fix it. But this is very easy to do with an array modifier. You draw this and then array, and in 1 minute you have it. And then at the end I got something like that. And we will go fast. So this is all the beams, all the parts, and then you just have to spend. It was longer to glue everything than to make the process of converting it from the EFC import into SVG. So then you glue, and you glue, and you glue again. Okay, I finished it in my kitchen. So this cannot be scripted, unfortunately. And then you have the model that is almost true to the building, except that you don't have all the thickness in the shops for the plywood. So I had to adjust some of the sizes, but it's just a matter of scale. So then what was quite long is once you have all your the problem with the SVG exporter is that it exports one curve at a time. So one day maybe somebody will work on it again. So on this project where most of the curves were repetitive, it's not a problem. But if I had to do this with 200 curves, you cannot do it. So you have to modify the SVG exporter so that you can export all the curves in the same time, or you join them. But for that, if you want to join them, it's better to place it the correct way before. So what is interesting for that is that I didn't find an add-on to make a packing of curves on a sheet, but there is a version of Blender that is called Blender Cam that is designed for CNC machining that I'm using in the Fab Lab for the CNC. So it's something like that. You just change the rendering engine into Blender Cam, and you can set your cutting operation. And they included a part that is called pack curves on sheet that does exactly that. You have 200 curves, all one just set like that, mixing, and then you say the size of the sheet, and it just align them so that there is no gap or a gap you choose, and it can you can disable rotation, because for me it was important that the pieces I cut in the plywood respect the grain of the wood. So you have to put the rotation in a good way, and then if you disable this, it will place all the sheets, but keeping the rotation so that you can cut it. So it's, as I told you, it's not for the guy. You tell him, okay, tomorrow you will be able to do that, because you have to use a lot of workarounds, but it works. And finally, this is the final building that is finished now. So the only thing that didn't work well was the growing of the grass. So the grass was not ready for the inauguration day. It's for that there is but the building was finished, and I'm quite happy with this was the image for the building permit before we choose the company. And this was the final result. So sorry. So there are some there are some very small differences here in this part of the walls, but for the rest is no, it's I'm quite happy with that. Let me just check time. Okay, I forgot to start my clock, so I didn't see. I only have 5 minutes. Either I show you some other things, or if you prefer, I can ask for questions. If people have some questions. I can show you a very small picture. Just this one, just in 1 minute. What I like in this example is that the builders so this is from Gaulle, okay, at the same time than Roman in France, and they didn't use straight wood at this time. So all the building is just like that. And doing this is very easy in Blender using, where is it? Using lattice. So I have to close this one. Okay, you just, with a lattice and a modifier, so you have to put a subsurf modifier, but not a Catmull-Clark, a simple modifier, subsurf simple modifier. Then you put a lattice, the same lattice on all your building, and then you just move around things and have fun. And the building moves. And every part of the buildings move with it. And what is interesting is that, okay, your walls, so they are not straight at all. You see, they are bended. And in top view, they are not straight. But if you enter edit mode, they become straight again. So you can move your windows using the local axis and things like that. If you have to move something, you use the local axis, and then you go out from the edit mode, and everything is bended. So where is it? So this is what I like with this type of things. Then 3D printing. I will show you where is the. But maybe if there is some space for the lightning talk tomorrow, I will show you. I will show this tomorrow for the lightning talk. So this is things I designed in Blender. I think you know how to design it. There is nothing impressive in the design. You take a curve. Okay, you take a circle. Then you select one every 2 points. There is in the select menu you have this. And then you make a scale so that one every 2 points go inside, and you have a flower. Then you extrude it, and you take the top, you tilt it, and you scale it, and you have your lamp. So this was a lamp I destroyed by mistake. It was a glass lamp at the origin, and I destroyed it. And I had to redesign it and printed it before my wife ran away. So. And finally, I prefer this one than the original one. And yes, I'm quite obsessive with lampshades. So these are examples of lampshades I designed in Blender. I like this one because it shows the difference between what you design in Blender and what you got in 3D printing. In Blender, everything is perfect, and when you 3D print it, there is some imperfections that finally I find more beautiful. This is very easy to do. Very easy. It's okay. It's a basic shape. Okay, it's a cylinder. Then you make all the face triangular. You put a small displace modifier with a noise so that it's a little not so straight. Then you make a linked duplicate of this. You put a wireframe modifier on this one, so that you have the wireframe of your lamp, and then you make a boolean between the basic shape with the solidify modifier and the wireframe shape, so that you have a thinner part here, and then when you print it, it lets the light So I don't know if I have the time to show you the model, but I should have it somewhere here. I think it's in this one. No, okay, these are some other tests. Okay, this one. I'm sure it's this one. And then I can show you other things I 3D printed. So this is a lamp. I will go the other way so that you understand how it's done. So I'm almost as obsessive with lampshade as I am with displace modifier on procedural textures. So this is just okay. It's a very basic polygonal shape with a lot of subsurf modifier and displace modifier with a Voronoi texture. And then I used plaster. It's earth, clay, to plaster it. And then with a sponge, you remove what is in the top. And then when you light, so the plaster keeps everywhere except in the, and you get this thing. Okay. And I think it's time. Okay, this is the same than the one I showed, but with just okay. The only thing more is that I used a build modifier. I don't know where it is. No, it's because it's pinned here. So the build modifier allows you to build something, or if you inverse it, I don't know if you know the. Okay, it will just make disappear randomly the faces of your object. So that once I finished the first lampshade, I said, okay, I will try with some holes. So with the build modifier that is here with reversed, and then if you move in time, it's quite slow on my laptop, you can choose the amount, because when you move in time, it will disappear slowly, and you choose the amount of faces you want to disappear and the amount of faces you want to keep. And okay, it disappeared. So one day we will have modifiers that are multi-threaded, and that will be fast. This one was a complete failure because the light is not proportional at all with the thickness of the plastic. In fact, I wanted to have something with the light pathing more or less, but in fact, I just had patches of light, and it was not nice at all. So this is the wireframe shape. And where is the original shape? It will belong to show. It should be here. Sorry, it's only my laptop. So this is how it looks like in Blender. So if you just have a look at the modifier stacks, you have a solidify modifier to give the thickness. Then you have a simple subsurf modifier, then another subsurf modifier, the Boolean with the grid version of it. But if you go in edit mode, the basic shape is just that. Okay, it's a cylinder, scale the top, and change all the face. And what I like with modifiers is that, of course, you can change it anytime you want. And as everything is linked, it should work. But generally, the last thing you do when you are already late doesn't work. I don't know if we have time for more questions. If there are some questions, it worked.
Yeah, just a moment. One question.
Thank you. No, it didn't.
There's one question over here.
Yes.
Okay, so how did you exactly export the mesh from Blender to Revit? What was it then in Revit?
So,
which format? And IFC via FreeCAD or?
No. It was too cumbersome to go through FreeCAD, so I used I even don't remember if it's, I think it's 3ds format. Then in Revit, you know Revit? You use it?
Yeah, heard of it.
Okay. In
And
Revit,
touched
you
it
have
once.
something that is called a family. A family, in fact, is an object that can be shared between several things. So when you put a family in your, let's say this is a family, I put it in my project. If I change the original family file, it's changed in all of my projects. And the other thing is that if you import the 3ds file in your project in Revit, when you cut it with the cut tool, you don't see the hatches and things like that. So you have to import your 3ds export from Blender in a family, and so that then you place your family in your project, so that when you change in Blender your file, then you import it again in your family, and the Revit will update it automatically. So with that workflow, you have almost a back and forth possibility. The only thing is that you have to understand where is the origin of the family, and to locate the origin of your project at the same place. So you move all your project in Blender so that the 0 of the project will be where you want the 0 in Revit. Once you found this, it's quite straightforward, because anytime you move a beam in Blender, you export it again, import it again in the family, and in your plans, everything moves. So it's much better than what I did before with Archicad. So it's not perfect yet, but it's quite working. So I use it for the project.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Other questions? So thank you all for your questions.